All right, guys, let's wrap up chapter 11, executive compensation. So we left off a little bit talking about the Dodd-Frank Act and the say on pay, which is non-binding vote of all the shareholders on the proposed executive compensation. And in 2019, 90% or so passed. So the shareholders agreed that it seemed like a reasonable compensation package and they were fine with it. But that also means that 9.5% did not pass. And so Willis Towers Watson did a study, and this was actually in September, it wasn't at the end of the year, but they were showing that companies are failing their say on pay. And a lot of those that was the first time that had happened. So remember, Dodd-Frank's been in effect since 2010. So during all those 9 years up to this point, they hadn't failed. So now these are first-time failures. And I just think it's interesting to look at why, because we've been talking about compensation, right? So a lot of it has to do with this long-term incentives, and they just weren't feeling like they were actually performance-based. Or if there was a huge raise, and maybe that raised some flags. Rigor in incentive plan metrics. A few years ago, some of the Netflix executives got into a little bit of trouble with their shareholders because they know how many subscribers they have, so they pretty much know how much revenue they're going to get. And some of those metrics were around, we got a big bonus if we have this much revenue. And the shareholders, some of the shareholders actually sued based on that. So the rigor of those plan metrics is really important. Just poor disclosure, which is what Dodd-Frank is all supposed to do in the SEC. And so there are many different reasons and things that people are looking at, shareholders are looking at when they're evaluating this compensation. All right, so now I want to talk a little bit about that ratio, CEO ratio to the median compensation of the employees. So at Wells Fargo, this new CEO with his replacement reward, which again was just that extra reward, extra money that they were giving him for taking this job, he has a $36.3 million 2019 compensation. Without that reward, which is a one-time thing, it's $23 million, which is what we saw in that proxy statement. 65.9 is the median compensation. Okay, so that's not bad. But look at this ratio, right? It's 349 to 1, or without that replacement reward, or 550. So we have to just think about this. Is it deserved? Is it too much? What I have here is Mindy Grossman, who's the CEO of Weight Watchers. Her ratio is 5,908 to 1. Kind of crazy. But anyway, let's think about this executive compensation. Is it important to have that much? Do we need it to attract and retain the very best executive talent? Do we worry in this country in particular about income inequality, income disparities? And I think that's becoming much more of a topic. And I've got a slide here in a little bit about some that Bernie Sanders has proposed. And especially right now, where we are with all these companies laying off, mass layoffs, these furloughs, these executives aren't the ones who are getting laid off. And in some companies, they're not taking any kind of a pay cut. Is this, again, is it fair? Is it ethical? And these are just some of the things that people are discussing. So let's go here to our crunch the numbers and how to calculate ratios. So in your book, what you're going to see are we're going to have industries of oil and gas, and we have the industry of retail. We have a CEO, HR manager, accountants, auditors, file clerks. Their median wage, oil and gas, median wage, retail. So the questions are asking, what is that percent difference, okay, between them? So if you remember, Now, all you have to do is, if you can look up here at the formula, but you're going to have the higher one here, higher minus lower divided by lower. Always remember your parentheses, okay? And you just do that for each one. So here you can see that oil and gas is consistently higher than retail, and here's how much. So by the different types of jobs, it looks like those file clerks is actually the largest percent difference, right? And the CEO is the least. So then you do a ratio comparison, and that's a simple, let's just take oil and gas divided by retail. Now, what I want you to notice here, these things kind of look similar, don't they? 1.04, 3.79, if you rounded it, it would be 4. 1.25, if you rounded this, it would be 2.5 and 0.25. So all of your ratio comparison is showing you is, again, it's this percent difference, except now it's going to be in a ratio comparison, all right? So that was looking at the different industries. But now we want to look at the jobs. So here's that CEO to HR manager, CEO to accountants and auditors, CEO to file clerks. So again, because it's a simple ratio, we're just going to take the CEO pay divided by the HR manager. We're going to take CEO pay divided by accounts and auditors, CEO pay divided by file clerks. And again, we're going to do it for each industry. But you can see, which makes sense, that the file clerk, there's going to be the largest ratio there. Okay, so this is a really simple one, but it tells, I think, a very compelling story. So you can see where those differences are and do they make sense. Okay, so here's my Bernie Sanders, and he has proposed, last September, he proposed this income inequality tax plan. And the intent behind it, right, is that if there's a huge ratio between the CEO pay and the average employee pay, then this company should pay taxes. I'm not really sure how effective that's going to be, because organizations have really smart people and they can kind of figure some things out and perhaps play some games with that. But worse, again, who's going to really pay for that? If they're having to, as an organization, is having to pay out more money, I don't know that it's going to come out of that CEO's salary. It's probably going to either affect the shareholders, it's going to affect the employees, it's going to affect the consumers who are having to now purchase this. So instead of, if you're going to do something like this, it seems like you should just be taxing the individuals versus taxing the organizations, but I am not a legislator, and so that is just my personal opinion. All right, now the last part of our chapter talks about international compensation. And so if you look at the bottom chart here, you can see that the CEO pay in the United States dwarfs all other countries. And so the average US CEO pay is 1.7 times higher than Germany. And then it just obviously gets more and more from there. It's also interesting whenever you do look at that CEO, the ratio between CEO and average worker pay. So again, in the United States, that's 265 times in 2018, and in China, it's 127. So we just have to evaluate. Does this mean, are we more competitive or less competitive? Is it a matter of culture? Does it make sense for us in, this capitalistic society of the United States? Does it help us? Again, there's that very tenuous performance to compensation link. So these are just things to think about as you are working with executive compensation. All right, guys, that is it. Thanks so much, and I will talk to you soon.